My friends, there is a force so subtle yet so powerful that few ever learn to use it. That force is silence. When you withdraw from the noise of the world, you give birth to clarity. In silence, the clutter of confusion dissolves, and the mind aligns itself with a definite purpose. It is in silence that your desires reveal themselves in their purest form. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is mastery. The one who learns to hold his tongue, to govern his impulses, and to observe without rushing into speech, has already taken control of himself. And self-control is the very foundation of success. Consider this: every word is energy. Every thought is a seed. When you scatter your words carelessly, your power leaks away. But when you reserve your words, discipline your tongue, and speak only with purpose, your words strike with the force of a hammer. They move people. They command attention. In silence, wisdom flows. Answers appear that noise conceals. Opportunities reveal themselves. And the world almost mysteriously begins to arrange itself in your favor. So I challenge you, step away from the clamor. Enter into silence each day. Guard your words as you would guard your treasure. And when you choose to speak, let your voice carry the weight of conviction, certainty, and power. Remember this truth: the man who can master silence can master himself, and the man who can master himself can make the world flow in his favor. Silence is not emptiness. It is not a void. It is power in reserve, strength unspoken, and influence concealed until the moment of its release. Those who learn to master silence rise above the common crowd, because they understand that the tongue, though small, can destroy opportunities when it is not governed by discipline. Silence is the art of conserving power, of letting thought mature before expression, of allowing presence to speak louder than noise. In every gathering, notice how the one who speaks the least often commands the most respect. The room leans toward them, curious about their thoughts, eager to hear their voice. Their silence is not ignorance, it is influence. It creates a magnetism that draws attention and commands authority without the need for constant words. The individual who can remain calm, who listens more than he speaks, holds an invisible advantage over those who exhaust themselves with chatter. Silence is the soil in which self-mastery grows. When you govern your own speech, you demonstrate control not only over your words, but over your emotions, impulses, and desires. This kind of mastery radiates strength to all who observe it. People naturally trust the one who does not spill every thought, but speaks only when words carry weight. Influence is never gained by the loudest voice in the room, but by the one whose silence creates curiosity, and whose words, when spoken, strike with precision. Consider how energy works. Every word requires energy. Every debate, every argument, every unnecessary explanation is a leakage of your inner power. The wise conserve that power. They choose silence when speaking would dilute their influence. And when they finally release words, those words carry the weight of conserved energy, concentrated and powerful, capable of moving minds and stirring action. Silence also grants an observer's vision. While others reveal their intentions, their fears, and their weaknesses through uncontrolled speech, the one who remains silent learns, analyzes, and prepares. Silence uncovers truths hidden from those too busy talking to notice. The silent person sees what the noisy overlook, and in that knowledge lies influence. For influence begins with understanding, and understanding is born from listening. There's also an unseen law at work. People instinctively value what is rare. Words spoken sparingly are received as rare treasures. They are weighed carefully, remembered longer, and acted upon more quickly. But words spoken without restraint lose their force. Influence is not in the abundance of speech, but in the scarcity of well-timed words. Think of a judge delivering a single sentence that changes the fate of a man. Think of a leader whose few decisive words move armies. Think of a mentor who speaks rarely, but whose every phrase echoes in the mind of the student. Their influence is not in their volume, but in their silence before they speak. The power of their words is born from the silence that preceded them. To create influence through silence, one must first embrace patience. The impatient man speaks to fill the void, but the patient man allows silence to work in his favor. He lets others reveal themselves. He waits until the moment is ripe. Then, with calm confidence, he speaks, and all ears are ready. Influence is not about speed, but about timing, and silence is the master of timing. Silence also cultivates mystery. People are drawn to what they cannot easily understand. When you hold back, when you do not reveal every plan, every thought, every strategy, you create a sense of depth. Others wonder what you know. They wonder what you are planning. Their imagination magnifies your presence.
They attribute wisdom to your silence.
And in that perception lies influence. In personal relationships, silence can heal and strengthen bonds. A careless word spoken in anger may wound for years, but silence in the heat of emotion preserves peace. The one who knows when not to speak holds power over conflict. Their restraint influences the outcome more than the sharpest argument ever could. Influence is not always about persuasion. Sometimes it is about prevention. And silence prevents damage words can never undo. In business, silence is often the secret advantage. The negotiator who listens, who allows the other party to fill the space with words, gains knowledge and leverage. The salesperson who pauses instead of rushing to speak creates anticipation and desire. The leader who speaks last hears all perspectives before guiding with authority. Silence here is not passive. It is active influence shaping the direction of outcomes. Silence also connects you with your inner self. In the quiet moments, away from noise, you access the deeper parts of your mind. Ideas come, solutions emerge, vision becomes clear. That clarity radiates outward and people sense it. They feel the calm assurance of someone who has spent time in silence, someone who does not speak to impress, but speaks because he knows. Influence begins inside, and silence is the pathway inward. The world admires confidence, and nothing communicates confidence more strongly than controlled silence. The insecure man rushes to explain himself, to prove himself, to defend himself with endless words. The confident man does not need to. His silence declares his strength. His silence tells others that he knows his worth, and therefore they believe it too. Silence is not absence, it is presence intensified. It is not weakness, it is power refined. It is not emptiness, it is fullness contained until the right moment. Those who master silence gain an influence that noise can never achieve. Their presence speaks before their words. Their silence creates the stage upon which their words become unforgettable. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the gathering of energy. Every word you speak, every unnecessary conversation you indulge in, is a release of power. Most people scatter their strength in endless chatter, never realizing that energy spent on idle talk is energy stolen from their dreams. Silence is the vessel in which energy is conserved, concentrated, and refined until it is ready to be unleashed with precision. To understand this is to understand the secret of channeling power in your favor. Energy is the currency of achievement. It is the unseen force that fuels imagination, persistence, and determination. Yet so many weaken themselves by wasting their words. They speak when they should think. They argue when they should observe. They complain when they should plan. In the end, their energy is exhausted before they have even begun the real work of pursuing success. Silence, however, reverses this condition. By learning to still the tongue and restrain the impulse to speak, one gathers energy like water behind a dam, building pressure, waiting for the right moment to flow with unstoppable force. Think of how nature works. A river that spreads itself too wide becomes shallow and weak, but when that same river is channeled, its current becomes strong enough to turn wheels, generate power, and carve through stone. So it is with human energy. The man who lets words spill without control diffuses his strength until nothing remains. The man who channels his energy through silence sharpens his force and becomes unstoppable when he finally acts. Silence is not passive, it is active preparation. Within silence, the mind organizes its thoughts, shapes its plans, and directs its energy. When you withhold your words, you give your imagination room to grow and your willpower room to strengthen. That quiet strength becomes energy stored within you. When the moment for action arrives, you move with clarity and conviction because your energy has not been wasted in noise. Every time you speak without purpose, you divide your focus. Every time you explain what needs no explanation, you drain your strength. Every time you argue with the trivial, you surrender power that could have been used for building, creating, and advancing. But silence reverses this loss. It protects you from scattering your energy and allows you to channel it toward your definite purpose. Influence, wealth, mastery, achievement. All are born not in endless talking, but in silence that saves strength for decisive action. Silence channels emotional energy as well. Anger, frustration, and fear often escape through words spoken without thought, words that wound and weaken. But silence harnesses those emotions and converts them into fuel for progress. The one who can remain silent when provoked demonstrates mastery over himself, and in that mastery lies power. Rather than wasting energy in verbal battles, he directs that energy into solutions, strategies, and victories. Silence also strengthens spiritual energy. In quiet reflection, you align with higher thought, with vision, with faith. That inner connection multiplies your power because it gives you certainty that words alone cannot provide. Out of silence comes confidence, and out of confidence comes decisive movement. Silence connects you to the source of all energy, and through that connection you gain strength that others cannot see but cannot deny. Consider the orator who pauses before he speaks. The pause is silence, but it channels the energy of expectation. The audience leans forward, waiting. That silence is not weakness, it is power. It gathers the attention of every listener and channels their energy toward his words. His silence creates the stage for his influence, and his words, delivered with concentrated force, strike the heart with greater impact than endless speech ever could. In your own life, think of how often you have spoken too soon, revealing plans that should have remained hidden, scattering energy on those who doubted you. Each time you did, your energy weakened, your drive diminished, your power leaked away. Silence would have protected you. Silence would have stored your energy until it was ready to manifest in results. Those who keep their silence and let their actions speak later discover that their energy flows where it counts most, into achievement. When you learn to channel energy through silence, you also master timing. Noise is impatient. Silence is strategic. The one who cannot remain silent acts before the time is right and fails. The one who gathers strength in silence waits until the exact moment, then releases his energy in a single decisive move that changes everything. Timing is power, and silence teaches timing better than anything else. Silence also channels creative energy. In the quiet, ideas emerge. In the stillness, solutions appear. Noise drowns them, but silence welcomes them. The mind cannot hear inspiration while it is busy speaking. It can only receive when it is listening. Silence is the channel through which imagination flows, and imagination is the seed of every achievement ever known to man. The world measures strength by volume, but true strength is measured by control. Anyone can speak, but few can remain silent. Anyone can argue, but few can listen. Anyone can waste energy, but the great ones channel it. The ability to be silent when others are loud, to conserve when others are wasting, to prepare while others are distracted, that is the mark of power. Silence channels energy because it creates focus. Focus is energy concentrated in one direction. Without focus, energy disperses like light scattered in the air. With focus, energy becomes like a laser, capable of cutting through steel. Silence gathers the scattered rays of your thought and channels them toward the single purpose that dominates your heart. Those who achieve greatness are not always the loudest, but are often the quietest. They are the ones who store their strength, guard their words, conserve their energy, and then release it in action that cannot be ignored. They are like the archer who pulls back in silence, storing energy in the bow, then releases the arrow with unerring force. Silence is the drawing back, action is the release. Energy is channeled in silence so that it can strike with precision when the time comes. Silence is the doorway to wisdom, for in silence the mind becomes clear, the heart becomes calm, and the truth that was hidden by noise begins to reveal itself. Most people spend their lives drowning in a sea of words, filling every moment with sound, chatter, and distraction. They mistake constant talking for learning, yet the one who never listens never grows. Wisdom is not gained in noise, it is discovered in silence. When you still your tongue and quiet your surroundings, you create the conditions for knowledge to flow toward you, for understanding to take root within you, and for wisdom to emerge from the depths of your own mind. In silence you hear what others miss. The person who listens while others speak gains insight not only from their words but from what is left unsaid. Silence allows you to see beyond appearances, to detect the truth hidden beneath the surface. When you are silent, you observe details, you read expressions. You notice the subtle signals that careless talkers overlook. Silence sharpens your perception, and perception is the foundation of wisdom. Silence also invites reflection. Words spoken too quickly leave no room for thought, but silence gives the mind space to process, to analyze, to connect ideas that would otherwise remain separate. In reflection, you discover patterns, principles, and lessons that talking alone cannot teach. Many people look for wisdom in books, in speeches, in endless discussions, but wisdom only becomes yours when you take time to be silent and let those ideas settle into your understanding. It is not what you hear alone that makes you wise, but what you absorb in silence after hearing it. The one who can remain silent in the presence of knowledge becomes a magnet for it. Teachers share more with the attentive listener than with the impatient talker. Mentors reveal deeper truths to the student who listens with focus rather than to the one who interrupts with noise. Life itself reveals its lessons to the quiet observer who pays attention. Silence is not emptiness, but receptivity, a readiness to receive. Wisdom flows toward the one who is ready, and silence is the sign of readiness. When you speak constantly, you block the channel through which wisdom could reach you. Your mind becomes occupied with the sound of your own voice, leaving no room for the voices of others or the whispers of intuition. Silence opens that channel. In silence, you not only hear what others say, but you hear yourself more clearly. You hear the voice of your own conscience, the guidance of your own intuition, and the wisdom that comes from within. The greatest truths are not shouted from outside. They arise quietly within the silent mind. Silence also protects you from error. Many people reveal their ignorance by speaking too soon, by answering before thinking, by rushing to fill a void with words that later bring regret. The wise man remains silent until he has considered, until he has weighed his response, until he has tested his thought against reason. In silence, he refines his knowledge into wisdom, and when he finally speaks, his words carry authority because they are born from thought rather than impulse. Wisdom is often the art of knowing what not to say, and silence is its first lesson. To be silent when provoked, to remain calm when others argue, to listen while others boast. These are marks of wisdom. They reveal an understanding that words can wound, that talk can escalate conflict, that speech without thought can destroy opportunities. Silence avoids these dangers and preserves both dignity and peace. In the realm of decision-making, silence is a powerful ally. Those who rush to act without thought often stumble, but those who pause in silence allow wisdom to guide them. In silence, options become clearer, consequences become visible, and choices reveal their true nature. A wise decision is rarely the product of haste. It is born from the patience of silence. Silence also brings you closer to the wisdom of nature. The world around you is always teaching, but few take the time to listen. In silence, you hear the rhythm of life, the order of the seasons, the patterns of growth and decay. You learn that everything has its time, that patience is rewarded, that persistence shapes results. Nature's wisdom is infinite, but only the silent observer receives its lessons. In relationships, silence reveals wisdom in ways words cannot. A friend who listens deeply often understands more than one who speaks endlessly. A leader who listens gains the trust of his people. A partner who remains silent in times of tension preserves love when careless words would have caused harm. Silence attracts the wisdom of empathy, for only in silence can you truly hear the feelings and needs of another. Even in moments of solitude, silence teaches. When you step away from the noise of the world, you discover truths about yourself. You learn your strengths, your weaknesses, your desires, your fears. You begin to see what truly matters and what is only distraction. That self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, and it is only gained in silence. The great mistake of many is to believe that influence and success come from constant speaking, constant noise, constant display. But real influence comes from wisdom, and wisdom is cultivated in silence. The world listens more carefully to the one who speaks rarely, for they sense that behind his words lies depth. That depth was not gained in noise, but in silence. Silence is not a prison. It is a school. It is not a void. It is a channel. It is the place where wisdom gathers its strength before it enters the world through thought, action, and speech. Those who run from silence run from wisdom. Those who embrace silence attract it. The path to wisdom is not paved with endless words, but with quiet reflection, patient listening, and the courage to let silence do its work. Silence is the training ground of willpower. It is within silence that the restless impulses of the mind are subdued, where scattered desires are disciplined, and where the strength to persist against difficulty is forged. The person who cannot control his tongue cannot control his destiny, for every ungoverned word is evidence of an ungoverned will. Yet the person who practices silence learns to master himself, and self-mastery is the highest form of power. When you hold your silence, you deny the urge for immediate release. The desire to speak quickly, to answer without thought, to argue when provoked, these are impulses that weaken the will. By choosing silence, you resist them. You train your mind to obey, you strengthen the muscle of restraint, and you prove to yourself that you are in command. Each moment of silence becomes an act of discipline, and discipline repeated becomes willpower unshakable. Silence also strengthens focus, and focus is the foundation of willpower. Noise scatters attention, but silence concentrates it. When you remain silent, you channel your energy inward. You gather your thoughts. You align yourself with purpose. This inward concentration builds persistence because the mind is no longer distracted by the clutter of unnecessary words. In silence, you gain the ability to hold to one aim with unwavering determination. Consider the moments of challenge in life, when everything in you longs to quit, to complain, to give in. If you give voice to those thoughts, they grow stronger. But if you remain silent, you weaken their hold. In silence, you do not give power to your doubts, you deny them breath. Your silence becomes a wall between you and defeat. And in that silence, your willpower finds room to grow. The person who learns to suffer in silence becomes stronger than the one who cries out in weakness, because silence turns pain into endurance, and endurance into victory. Silence also trains patience, and patience is willpower extended over time. Those who cannot wait cannot achieve, for achievement is always delayed gratification. Silence teaches waiting without complaint, persistence without noise, faith without constant reassurance. In silence, you endure the passage of time with strength, and that endurance becomes the backbone of success. The impatient talker burns his energy in frustration, but the silent one saves his energy for steady progress. In silence, you also learn to resist the influence of others. Many are led astray because they cannot hold their silence in the presence of opinion. They rush to agree, to argue, to explain, and in doing so they surrender their independence of thought. But the one who remains silent holds to his own mind. He listens, he observes, but he does not yield until he chooses. This quiet strength is willpower in action, the ability to remain unmoved when others push, to remain steady when others waver. Silence is also the builder of inner confidence. The person who always speaks seeks validation from others, but the one who practices silence relies on himself. He does not need the approval of the crowd. He is sustained by his own certainty. Each moment of silence reinforces his self-reliance, and self-reliance is willpower. To stand alone in silence is to prove that your strength does not depend on noise, on applause, or on agreement, but on your own conviction. When you commit to a great purpose, silence becomes your ally. You do not announce every step of your plan. You do not explain yourself to doubters. You do not argue with those who cannot see your vision. You remain silent and let your energy flow into action. This restraint strengthens your will, for you are no longer controlled by the need to justify yourself. You are free to persist without distraction, and persistence is the highest expression of willpower. Silence even transforms failure into strength. Those who fail and rush to complain, to excuse, to explain, weaken themselves further. But those who fail and remain silent gather their strength instead of wasting it. They reflect, they learn, they endure, and their silence becomes the seed of renewed determination. In silence, failure becomes a lesson instead of a prison, because willpower is strengthened by reflection and broken by noise. There is a quiet courage in silence, the courage to endure misunderstanding, the courage to be underestimated, the courage to hold back when you could lash out. This courage is willpower, and it grows stronger every time you choose silence over weakness. The world admires those who can remain calm under pressure, who can hold their ground without noise, who can act without announcing. Their silence is proof of strength, and their willpower inspires respect. Silence also creates the inner space for vision. When you are silent, you can see beyond the present struggle. You can imagine the future reward. You can keep your eyes fixed on the goal. That vision feeds your willpower because you are no longer consumed by the noise of temporary pain. You endure the hardship of today because in silence you see the triumph of tomorrow. The truth is that silence is not a lack of power, but the concentration of it. It is the gathering of strength, the training of discipline, the building of patience, the forging of endurance. Every moment of silence is a victory of the will over impulse, of discipline over weakness, of persistence over surrender. Those who practice silence daily create within themselves a reservoir of willpower so deep that no obstacle can exhaust it. Silence sharpens thought because silence is the natural workshop of the mind. In the stillness of silence, ideas take form, clarity replaces confusion, and the mind discovers solutions, hidden beneath the noise of endless words. Most people drown their own thinking in constant speech, leaving no space for thought to gather strength. They rush to talk, to explain, to argue, and in doing so, they rob themselves of the greatest power they possess, the ability to think with depth. Silence is the whetstone upon which thought is sharpened, and those who cultivate it rise above the ordinary level of understanding. When you remain silent, you allow the mind to operate without interruption. Words are energy, and when that energy is scattered in constant speech, the mind becomes restless and unctuous. But when you hold your silence, you conserve energy for thought. That energy fuels concentration, and concentration is the blade that cuts through confusion. The thinker who practices silence develops an intellect that sees clearly where others are blinded by distraction. The world belongs not to the talkers, but to the thinkers. The talker wastes his time rehearsing his own ignorance, while the thinker, in silence, gains knowledge and understanding. Every great invention, every discovery, every breakthrough began first in silence. The quiet mind turned inward. The silent thinker observed what others ignored, and out of that silence came thought so sharp it could pierce through the ordinary and create the extraordinary. Silence also deepens reflection. Talking forces the mind outward, but silence draws it inward, where it examines, analyzes, and refines. Reflection requires quiet, because thought grows best in stillness, just as seeds sprout best in undisturbed soil. When you are silent, you revisit your experiences, you learn from them, you extract lessons, and you prepare your mind for greater challenges. Each moment of reflection sharpens your thought like a blade passed across stone until it shines with precision. When you choose silence, you become an observer. You notice the details hidden in conversations, the intentions behind words, the opportunities others overlook. Observation fuels thought, and silence is the condition that makes observation possible. A person who listens more than he speaks gathers the raw material for thought, and with that material, his mind creates conclusions others cannot reach. The one who speaks too much sees little, but the one who remains silent notices everything, and in noticing everything, he develops thought of uncommon sharpness. Silence is also the guard against error in thinking. Words spoken too soon commit the mind to conclusions not yet tested. But silence gives time for verification, for reasoning, for careful judgment. The silent thinker weighs facts, compares possibilities, and considers outcomes before arriving at truth. This patience produces accuracy, and accuracy is the hallmark of sharp thought. Those who rush to judgment often prove themselves wrong, but those who remain silent until their thought is honed speak with certainty that cannot be shaken. In moments of silence, imagination awakens. The noisy mind cannot imagine, for imagination is delicate and requires quiet to grow. In silence, the mind plays with ideas, connects unrelated facts, and creates visions of what could be. These visions sharpen thought because they force the mind to stretch beyond what is obvious. Every work of genius, whether in science, art, or leadership, was born in the silence of imagination before it was revealed in words. Silence is the birthplace of creative thought, and creative thought reshapes the world. Silence also disciplines the mind to think independently. Those who constantly talk are often swayed by the opinions of others, repeating ideas without testing them. But the one who values silence examines ideas in solitude, compares them against his own reason, and develops convictions that belong to him alone. This independence sharpens thought because it forces the mind to rely on itself. The silent thinker is not a follower of noise, but a leader of thought, and the world is moved by leaders of thought. In silence, problems that once seemed impossible often reveal simple solutions. The noise of worry, debate, and complaint clouds the mind, but silence clears it. With a clear mind, the thinker sees straight to the heart of the problem and finds the answer hidden within. The ability to solve problems is the highest form of sharpened thought, and that ability is cultivated in silence. Silence is not merely the absence of words, it is the presence of concentrated attention. To sit in silence with a definite question in mind is to summon the power of thought toward that question. The longer you hold that silence, the more your mind gathers its forces, and eventually the answer breaks through with clarity. This is not chance. It is the natural result of silence sharpening thought until thought pierces the problem like a blade through paper. Even in daily life, silence elevates the quality of thinking. The one who pauses in silence before responding avoids regret. The one who reflects in silence before making a choice avoids foolishness. The one who plans in silence before acting avoids waste. Each act of silence sharpens thought for better living, and the cumulative effect of such living is mastery over circumstances. Silence also prepares thought for expression. The words of a person who has remained silent until his thought is clear strike with greater impact than the endless words of one who speaks without preparation. Silence sharpens the idea, shapes it, and polishes it before it is released. When finally spoken, the thought carries force because it has been forged in silence. Words backed by sharpened thought move people, inspire action, and create influence. The mind is like a blade. Left unused, it grows dull. Used without sharpening, it becomes ineffective. But when it is honed in silence, it becomes keen and powerful. Silence is the whetstone of thought, the practice that transforms an ordinary mind into a tool of extraordinary precision. Those who fill their days with endless words will never know the strength of a sharpened thought. But those who embrace silence will discover that the quiet mind can cut through any difficulty, solve any problem, and create any future it chooses.